starting the live stream. It'll be ready in a moment. We're live. Brian, are we good? Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Middleton Finance and Personnel Committee meeting for October 7th. And we'll start with some roll call. Bill?
Can I roll?
Here.
Lorman?
Here.
Crow?
Here.
All present?
Alrighty. Approval of the minutes. Do we have any comments or notes from the committee? Okay. We will accept the minutes as submitted, Bill. Oh, no, we don't have to vote on that. Okay. Do I need to do each one individually or just both?
Yeah, I think since the motion's not required, it's okay to just declare them both approved.
Okay. All right. Audit bills. Bill, you said you didn't have any,
Yep, no additions tonight.
alrighty. I'd like to make a motion for, accepting the audit of the bills.
A second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Resolutions. The first resolution is Resolution 2025-46, requesting exemption from the Dane County Library tax.
And I'll make a motion, not sure the exact wording, request that council approve the resolution to exempt the Middleton Library from the Dane County Library.
All right.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
I just had a question. So the calculation is the county tax rate times the equalized valuation for property in the city. And what is the dollar amount then?
Bring that up. Okay, yeah, for 2026, the minimum calculation amount is 1,580,694. And looking at the proposed budget for the library plus the portion of the personnel contingency for library employees, the total is 1,725,787, about $145,000 over the minimum.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Do we have any other questions? Oh, okay. All those in favor of Resolution 2025-46, requesting exemption from the Dane County Library tax, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Agreements and contracts. And I see Charles is here. We'll continue discussion of that. Consideration and discussion and possible action on a cell lease on the water tower. I guess it's W-169.
This is an I move to recommend the council approve the tower and ground space lease agreement with T-Mobile Central LLC.
Yeah, and Lorman will second that. Any questions or discussions? And so, Alder Myers would like to speak. May he do that? Bill,
Yeah,
we don't
you're-
typically take public comment. We're okay with that?
You're the chair, so at your discretion.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's at the discretion of the chair.
That's fine. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for recognizing me and allowing me to speak. I am speaking as well colleagues, although I am a member of the board of directors for the water utility, I am not speaking on their behalf in this specific instance.
Oh.
because we-
Microphone.
Hang on a second. Hang on, Charles.
Sorry, Charles.
Start over.
Can you hear me now? Is the mic picking it up? Or do I need to? Oh. Can we hear? Oh. I just wanted- Oh. Okay. So am I good to speak now? Great. Hi, I'm here speaking as one of your colleagues. Although I am a member of the board of directors for the water utility, I am not speaking on behalf of that body because we did not vote on this comment. I did, however, want to explain my yes vote in committee on this. I voted yes for the purpose of advancing this lease for discussion. I think that siting cell antenna on our water tower is a great source of revenue for the utility. However, I did want to flag for the Finance and Personnel Committee that the 12.5% escalation over a 5-year span puts us below the CPI rate of inflation for the 5-year span beginning from 2022 through what it is likely to be at the end of 2025, or excuse me, at the end of 2027, if that was the 5-year span from when that policy was adopted. And it would put us at 12.5% increase annually versus a projected increase of 15% for inflation, according to the data and projections that I've seen. So I ask the company to consider this policy more fully before going ahead and standardizing our lease terms at 12.5. I'd ask that the body consider building in some sort of inflation protection into our leases with cell carriers to make sure that the water utility is getting every dollar that it can. The difference year end for this particular lease would be about $800 for the antenna covered by it. But when you add that up for all of the antennas that may be sited on our towers, it starts to become a real amount of money. So I just ask that this body consider this policy and how to better protect us against inflation.
Thank you. That's interesting. That's good information. Any thoughts?
Well, I had in my notes, how was that 12.5% determined and why isn't it based on inflation? I know that airport hangar leases give the city the option of increasing by an amount equal to the CPI increase over the previous 5 years. Why is that not included in the cell tower agreement?
This lease, I think we have at least one other cell tower user on this form of lease. This has kind of been a long project that Sean Stowski started. I don't recall, and I may not ever have known where he came up with the 12.5%. I think the rates were probably derived just from looking largely at a lot of other cell tower leases and extrapolated from there would be my guess. But, you know, this was an effort to try to get, you know, all the cell lessees on our water towers to be on the same contract. And so I think the other, at least one other cell tower company is on the same format, the same rates and increases. So this company's gonna, and they know that because we've pushed back on a few other changes that they wanted to make to this by telling them, well, this is our form contract now. So, you know, not that is a controlling, but there's likely to be some pushback on the rates if we want to change that, because we already approved one with this rate structure.
Right, okay, I see that. So who is on the 12.5% increase contract? 'Cause there are two others, correct? Verizon and AT&T?
You open to recall, Diego?
That is correct. T-Mobile, AT&T and T-Mobile are other. And I believe they're also at 5%.
So this is the third one to use this language?
Believe so. We prior, Sprint, before they merged with T-Mobile, I think that was our third, but they merged. Now it's only T-Mobile and AT&T. Or Verizon,
I think it's,
sorry.
I thought I recall looking at it from 2022 and Verizon, AT&T and Sprint maybe were the three, but now Sprint's part of T-Mobile. I would be in favor of consistency in the city's favor. I don't know if it's possible to amend the agreements with, the other two parties if they're already on a 12.5%, or a contract with a 12.5% escalation clause. But I do think it's important that we not, see that revenue diminish with inflation.
Are the other leases 5-year leases? Are they kind of this, and when do they expire, I guess that would be?
Yeah, I'd have to go back. Well, I mean, I imagine they're all the same term, but of course, they're all starting at
Different
different
times.
Different
times now
times,
too,
yeah.
but.
Like updating those leases when they expire with a.
So because we haven't engaged yet with them on this, we can change at least this one, and then as the other ones expire, renegotiate those with us.
Like I said,
CPI.
yeah, we have not signed this lease, so it's not, but like I said, I mean, they are aware overall that the others have this same structure, but, of course, they don't. Somebody else could have a different structure later on. I mean, everyone's gonna, at some point, if we're gonna ever change it, they're not all gonna change at the same time.
And Bill, are you able to confirm that the two leases? From the memo, it sounded like this might be the first one.
Yeah, my recollection is that we have at least one other one with these terms. We can certainly look at all of the leases. I'm trying to find that. I've not pulled it up yet. And I believe these are structured, that they're 5-year terms, but with a longer term agreement with the ability to renew. And I think, and I was not involved in the negotiations with the carriers. But I believe some of these agreements date back to when inflation was lower, and I think there was some interest perhaps on both party sides of having a consistent rate over a long-term agreement. But we can follow up with more information. I'll have to do a little pulling out of these agreements to see what the current terms and status of the other lease agreements are.
Are we under a time constraint tonight to make a decision on this? Can we afford to?
We've sort of been in almost completed negotiations since like May or June, just before Sean left.
Okay,
So I don't know, another 2 weeks probably isn't gonna blow anything up. I'm not aware of any other constraints other than that this has been sort of a
yeah.
project that has dragged out.
No, I think I remember when I was on Public Works,
Yes.
This one, we started talking about
Verizon.
putting these
started
together.
around 23,
It looks like Verizon,
20%.
So that was one,
I'm trying to
Sorry.
see if. any
that was a while ago.
yeah, well, it looks like Verizon, was on the council agenda in June of last year.
Yes, it was
And it's,
last year.
and it said following execution of the replacement lease with Verizon, staff will approach both T-Mobile and AT&T with leases. So did we do anything? Do we have a lease with a current lease with AT&T? Cause if two of the three can be put on
I think.
Um,
Hours.
a CPI-based
I think that's
escalator.
just an
I
even
think
issue.
it's just Verizon.
I would
T-Mobile.
opt to do that.
Cause I saw the.
Okay.
we-
I mean, would 2 weeks give staff just some time to dig into this a little bit more and not throw a problem into this process?
Yeah, I think, I'm not aware of any time pressure within the next 2 weeks unless you are, Attorney Fleming.
No, I said just other than that's how long it's taken, but that's probably just as much an argument for saying another 2 weeks won't make a difference.
I can report that Diego and I did find the details for the Verizon lease, which was agreed in 2024 with the language of the 12.5% over a 5-year period.
Yeah.
But we can do some checking to see if there are other leases out there with that term.
Right, so we may not have one in place with AT&T yet then.
That's what we need to check on.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember we
Okay.
talked about
Okay,
this.
yeah, Ben Johns just reported that AT&T's will be expiring at end of this year, and then that would be the next one that would be up for renegotiation of term.
Sure. So at least maybe moving forward then, definitely for well, we can't talk about AT&T tonight, but we maybe discuss that at the next meeting as well, if it would help proactively staff.
Yeah,
Or set that as the standard going forward, like a 15%.
Or,
Link
well,
to
the
CPI.
5-year, yeah. That, I would be in favor of that. And, I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen? T-Mobile will come back and say no, and we'll say yes. And, because maybe the 12.5% was the 5-year CPI rate increase when the contract with Verizon was signed. So there's a good reason there.
And as Charles points out, the CPI changes every year.
Yeah.
So,
All right, then I will I'd like to amend my motion. Back to this. I will amend my motion to specify on find the page. Utilities compliance.
I guess the motion
It's a
really
very
was
long
just,
agreement to change 12.5%, but I'm trying to find where it is.
rent escalation of 12.5% per 5-year term.
Right,
to-
but I'm trying to find it in the contract itself. There it is. Okay, so I move to amend the agreement to specify in paragraph 3, rent, which is page 12 of the packet, if you're trying to find it, change 12.5% to an amount equal, I'm sorry, change it to say by an amount equal to the increase in the consumer price index over the previous 5-year period.
Sounds good.
Okay, we need to
So I need a
second.
second.
I'll second that. I'll second what Alder Haniro just said.
Okay.
Any discussion?
No,
All those in favor, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay,
And then I believe we'll need to vote on the main motion as amended.
so now the main motion on the floor would be consideration, discussion, possible action on the cell tower, lease on the water tower, WU-169, with the new language to have a rent escalation equal to the consumer price index over a 5-year period term. Is that good enough?
sure.
Okay. Matt, you scowled a little?
I'm just making sure I understand. my
It-
notes of what we're doing here.
Basically, it's similar to what the airport hangar lease says with regard to identifying what the, in that case, what the maximum increase could be.
Where's taking out 12.5 and replacing it with language that says consumer price index
Right, over that 5 year.
over 5
For the
period.
The
Yeah,
previous 5-year period.
Right,
Right.
okay. Also doing two things, I was trying to find the other leases too.
So
Got
then,
it.
so then moving forward, we'll just edit that one section in each lease. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
hi,
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Thank you for the input and counsel from Public Works
from Alder Myers.
and Alder Myers.
Yeah, no, Alder Myers made it clear he was speaking on his own behalf.
Oh,
Yeah, just on my own behalf. not
Sorry.
On behalf of either body.
thank you for the counsel, Alder Myers. All right, agreements and contracts, school resource officer program agreement for 2025 through 2026 school year.
This is Sonira. I move to recommend that council approve the school resource officer program agreement between the city of Middleton and MCP ASD for 2025 through 2026.
Okay, do I have a second?
This is Crow, I'll second.
All right. Do we have any discussion?
Yes, can we bring up the document? Bill, I don't know if you saw the message I had sent earlier with some corrections, such as getting rid of the 5 before the school resource officer in the title.
Yes, I did get your message. I forwarded that to Chief Thompson. He identified that there were some typos in the agreement, including the stray 5 at the top of the agreement. He recommended that those could be corrected with both parties' agreement. A couple of the other comments that were related to the term and the start date of the agreement would probably mean discussion between the city and the school district if we're changing the format of the agreement, was his comment.
Okay, can we at least change on page 40 of the packet, so maybe further down on the page where, thank you, where it says that in paragraph 2B, the SRO who serves Middleton High School, one reason for this agreement is to specify that there will now be 2 SROs serving at Middleton High School. So I think that is a change that's necessary. Page 42 of the packet about an evaluation being in, it should be a format mutually agreed upon. Yeah, 8A, that second sentence of 8A. And then I did not see what the actual commencement date is for this agreement. I see the expiration date on the screen, but I didn't see a commencement date.
It states, somewhere that is the commencement, well, the date last executed by the parties.
Okay,
So
and
when
which is set forth above.
Well, once
Once
the
you put
last
it in
party
there.
signs, then you typically write that, that's up in the first
In the first paragraph, okay.
versus blanks for date.
And just for my benefit, what, so the date will be sometime after,
After
today?
sometime after today, yeah. Everybody signs it, and then the last person that signs it, you can write
okay. Okay,
that date.
and it's for the 2025-2026 school year, right? So that 10-month period doesn't really matter what the 10-month period is, it's just 10 months out
Yeah, I
of the year.
look back, apparently that language has always just been there, so I imagine there is I mean, the 10-month period seems pretty clearly tied to the
School year,
But I agree, it's not the
Yeah.
clearest of language, and I mean, given how long we've operated under this language, I don't know that it's critical, but maybe we flag that for
next,
future renewals.
sounds good. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Charles? Questions, comments? Okay.
Randall, my name's
Randall.
Charles.
Sorry.
It's
Okay.
okay.
It's okay, John.
Oh, that's right. It's a long day. Okay. Okay, are we accepting this as submitted with corrections?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that's right, Charles. Okay. Item number 3, approval of agreement with Bolter and Lincoln for the marketing services for Visit Middleton. I guess it's an FPC 102725 and the TC 102125. Do I have a motion?
This is an I move to recommend that council approve the agreement with, is it Belter or
Oh.
Bolter?
I don't know.
I'll say Bolter and Lincoln for marketing services for Visit Middleton pending approval by the Tourism Commission.
Right. I'll second that. Any discussion or questions?
You see Mari is here. Yeah, I don't have
Matt
any
has no
questions.
input on it, okay.
Yeah, I previously reviewed it and they made the change that I requested, so I'm good with it.
All right. I have no questions. All right. Well, then, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. And we're on to the budget discussion and deliberation. Let Bill take that away.
Yeah, thank you. Casey and I are going to start with a brief presentation, just going through some updates and flagging some items for consideration by the committee. And then from there, we can open up to further budget questions, deliberations, and any potential actions on the budget. So I'm going to go over a couple budget updates, review the personnel requests that are in the budget and the status of those in the proposed budget. Then turn it over to Casey to provide additional information on the compensation study implementation recommendations. And then we'll wrap up with information on the budget public hearing and the remainder of the process. There were a couple of updates that were sent out via email to the council, responding to questions that came up at the last meeting on the budget and providing updates on additional information. I did want to highlight one of the items that was included in those emails because it relates to an additional revenue that we're anticipating for 2026. And that is our general transportation aids or state road aids from the state of Wisconsin. Those aids are distributed based on a formula that looks at a 6-year average of transportation costs. And there's a set pool of funding at the state level that is allocated to qualifying municipalities, either based on average cost or a per mile calculation. For City of Middleton, it's based on an average cost. And that pool of money is allocated by running these formulas and then determined what each municipality is going to receive for the following year. When we put together the proposed budget, we did not have that calculation from Department of Transportation. And so we had estimated a 5% increase in the aid payment. Fortunately, this is an area where our state aids did go up and pretty significantly this year. And based on the final calculation, we're expecting aid of $1,660,036. That's an increase of 12.6% over the prior year budgeted amount. It's close to the maximum allowable by that formula. And that's driven by a combination of things. There was a 5% increase in funding at the state level, statewide. Plus Middleton's 6-year average cost has been going up in part due to some of the large transportation projects we've had, notably Pleasant View Road, Parmenter, and some of the other projects. So as a result, there is an additional $112,623 that we are anticipating in revenue in 2026 beyond what was included in the proposed budget. Next, I just wanted to go through and highlight the personnel initiatives in the budget. So this slide is the same that was in the previous presentation at the last meeting. This goes through the positions that are requested in the general fund or that are partially or fully supported by the general fund. There were a total of just under 9 full-time equivalent positions requested with that funding. Only one of those is recommended for approval in the proposed budget, and that is the EMS Deputy Chief with a mid-year start of July 1st. And just as I had said last time, that does not indicate that there isn't need or merit to these other positions, but just given the significant revenue constraints in putting the proposed budget together, only that one position was included for this budget. This next slide goes through the positions that were requested for funds outside of the general fund or outside of general fund support. In the water and sewer utilities, there was a utility office assistant requested as a new position, requested as a 30-hour-a-week or 0.75 full-time equivalent position. There was some discussion about should that be filled at a 3/4 time or potentially a full-time. At that level, it does receive benefits. There's not a huge increase in the cost between that, but as requested and as proposed currently, that's a 3/4 time position. The second position is one that we did see on the previous list. That was an assistant city engineer that would be split 50% between the general fund and 50% to the water utility. That is not included in the proposed budget at this time. The next item is stormwater utility. There were 2 full-time stormwater utility crew members included in the requested budget. Those were not included in the proposed budget, and I'll touch a little bit more on that in the next slide to come back to that. And then the final 2 are 2 positions for the golf course that are currently limited term employees that the golf course is proposing to create permanent regular positions for those 2 positions with those employees moving into that status. And those are included in the golf course budget and the proposed budget. Looking at the stormwater utility staffing, part of the reason that those are not included in the proposed budget is because it's a pretty significant change from what was just recently approved by the stormwater utility referendum and in the 2025 budget. The referendum that was approved in November of 2024 included an increase to stormwater utility fees based on a stormwater utility rate study that was prepared during 2024. And that rate study identified several positions that would be funded by the stormwater utility. That included 50% of the city engineer / stormwater utility manager position, 50% of a new stormwater utility technician, 80% of a stormwater utility lead crew member. And then the budget for 2025 also included an allocation of other Department of Public Works crew members with the allocation that 20% of their time and costs would be budgeted to the stormwater utility and 80% to the city's general fund and the Public Works Department. So total FTE equivalents funded by stormwater utility are at 3.6 in the 2025 budget. The request for 2026 would be to increase that by 2 additional FTE. And I think part of the rationale for that was to have, in addition to the allocation of general streets crew, additional staff dedicated primarily to the stormwater utility to make more progress on projects. However, that's a pretty significant change in the staffing level of the stormwater utility, and the proposed budget recommends that these positions be evaluated as part of the organizational study that's going to be kicking off shortly, and then there should be an update to the stormwater utility rate study to look at the long-term impact of the additional positions that are requested. I guess I'll pause there if there's any questions on those before we turn it over to Casey for the compensation plan. Okay, go ahead, Casey.
All right, so I just kind of took Baker Tilly's slides that they had presented on September 16th to you, and just, we are the budget is proposing implementing 2 options, but we really wanted to focus on that option 3 that kind of also addresses some compression issues. So that's really what these are about. So I'm not going to read this whole thing all over again, because I know you guys just did listen to it on the 16th, but we came up with this because bullet point 4 does recommend that we select an implementation scenario that addresses the city's compensation philosophy and business goals, and that is fiscally attainable and sustainable. So that is how we came to the decision on that proposed budget for this compensation study. And just some background, so the pay compression refers to the situation where there is a narrow pay differential between employees regardless of their experience or tenure in the organization, which is again, that option 3 that alleviates the compression by moving employees further into the range relative to their time in the position. And the graph kind of gives a display of that. If you hit enter, they should show up. Sorry. So the line graph shows their current average of pay range placement for our employees based on their years and position. Some key observations from this chart are that new employees are already averaging 29% grade placement, while employees in their first year are averaging 19%. Employees in year 2 and 3 have inconsistent grade placement, with it going up to 32%, but then dropping back down to 28%. And employees in years 8 through 9 in their positions have a little more increased consistency. However, the average they still have not met the midpoint of their pay grade, when typically employees will reach midpoint within 5 to 7 years as recommended. And then employees with 10 or more years in their positions drop again with an average grade placement of 41% of their pay grade. So on average, they are still not at midpoint. The scatter graph does show that some are at over the midpoint, but there's just not as many as we would expect there to be with how many years they've been in their position. So looking at the recommendations, so on January 1st, again, we are recommending that employees receive the grade of moving to the minimum of their assigned pay grade or a 2.5 salary adjustment, which essentially would be like a COLA for those that are not moving grades. This scenario intends that no eligible employees would receive less than 2.5%, again, kind of working as a COLA. And then on July 1st, employees receive a 2.5 adjustment for each year in their position, capped at 6 years from the proposed minimum. And we did add a chart there of how many employees would be affected by that. So there is about 85 in various years of year 1 to 6. I do just want to clarify that there are people in their position for more than 6 years, but just for financially reasons, we did cap it as 6. But it will still help with fixing some of that compression that's going on. Any questions on that?
Yeah, and then this next slide it goes through and breaks down the total costs for each option. So the Baker Tilly report had provided the wage cost for the various options. We've gone through and added in the benefit costs for FICA and retirement, and then broken that down by fund. So for the option 1 of move to minimum or 2.5%, total cost is estimated at $336,000, of which about $253,000 would be for the general fund and other funds supported by the general fund. For the option 3 that Casey just described, implementing that with a mid-year start for that, total estimated cost is $154,000. The general fund supported portion is $114,000. For that option 3, because it's proposed to be a mid-year start, you would have essentially double that impact in the following year, and that's something that we're anticipating looking at 2027. So the amounts here in this general fund supported column would make up a portion of what is in the personnel contingency in the proposed budget. And the intent would be that if these options or some other version of this is supported, that personnel contingency would be allocated out across the different departments and funds as part of the final budget adoptions. And I should add too that we will be sending out a copy of all of these slides. We were still finalizing them up till this afternoon, but we will send that out so you have a copy of these numbers. Final thing that we wanted to touch on before we open things up is just kind of next steps in the process. According to the budget calendar that was adopted earlier this year, the budget public hearing would be held on Tuesday, November 4th at 7 p.m. as part of the regular council meeting. There is a requirement in state statute that there is a publication in the official newspaper at least 15 days prior to the meeting. And because of the time lags for publication and getting that to the newspaper, we would need direction this evening from this committee and council if we are going to meet that date for November 4th to publish. That doesn't mean that the committee has to finalize their budget recommendations tonight. We just need direction to publish something, publish the budget as proposed with amendments, or if the committee is ready to recommend a budget. But whatever version, we would need some direction this evening. From here, after tonight, there is the next Finance and Personnel Committee meeting on October 21st. That would be available for additional budget discussions, deliberation, and amendments if needed. Then the plan would be to hold the budget public hearing on November 4th, as well as discuss any amendments at the council level, with the tentative date for action on the budget and the tax levy on November 18th. With that, as staff, we're all available to answer questions on either any of this information or anywhere else in the budget. And we have budget materials available that we can bring up if we'd like to start discussing anything.
Go ahead. I know you're
I,
dying.
well, no, I just would like to wait until our next meeting to talk about those stormwater positions, because I want to, maybe it's first time hearing it, I want to give some thought to that and look up the rate study and see what our options might be. But I have suggestions for general fund operations, capital projects, and miscellaneous.
No, I don't think I have it.
Requests then? Yep, okay. So with the new revenue, that Bill just talked about and the possibility of a recycling charge, thank you for researching that, Bill. That would put $405,048 in play. I also appreciate the information you gathered on a possible wheel tax. Very timely. I learned that there might be legislation that would require even a retroactive referendum for the municipalities that have already started to charge a wheel tax. So the wheel tax looks a little more dicey with that legislation. But with that $405,000, I would like to add the full-time training officer that Chief Thompson requested, along with the 2 part-time community service officers. Together, that would be $186,481. I've said before, I know how much not just District 6 residents, but residents throughout Middleton express their support for our police officers in particular. I know in District 6, there have been a lot of requests for enforcement of speed limits and people walking their dogs without a leash in the Conservancy. Problems, in fact, right down the street, there is a problem with a car that's blocking a sidewalk, and that shouldn't be the case. So I think having those 3 positions, the 2 part-time and then the full-time training officer, would be a good investment. I also think the rec staffing request for $82,000 to really publicize their programs more. That one of the questions I asked last week of Kylie was, does the revenue side in the proposed budget reflect additional revenue expected as a result of all of the work that part-time person is doing? And the answer was yes. So I think, again, that $82,000 investment is a good one if it means that not just that we're generating more revenue through our programs, but that our residents are getting more value because they're learning about the programs and they're participating more. That's the real key. I'm also concerned about our Conservancy lands. We have a brand new Conservancy lands plan which I still, I'll reiterate my recommendation that that be referenced in the narrative for the Parks and Recreation Department. The implementation of that plan being a top goal. So I would be in favor of a conservancy technician being added back in. The roof contract doesn't seem like a bad idea, given that our buildings will all still be here next year. So 24,000 for some preventive work on the roof, or at least to find out what needs to be done. That seems good. And then finally, I would like to see a recognition event for committees and commissions. It's been a while since we had one. And maybe add some money for training too. I know we all received an email about the building workshop that some of us attended earlier this year. Smart Growth Madison sponsored it. It would be nice to get free registration, but it was a worthwhile event. And I think if our members, or certainly our chairs and vice chairs of committees, commissions, and boards want to get some kind of training to help them perform their duties, I think we should make that available. So I'm just throwing out the figure of $2,000. Adding all those up would come to $386,515. I did the math correctly, and I think I did. And of course, that would require, if we were to add these items, that would require the addition of revenue on the revenue side, the recycling charge that is referenced in the Q&A that Phil sent to us earlier. $292,425 per year.
And
I guess, one of my concerns coming from library is the sorter, that they're using. I'm aware of trying to find a way to help fund that in some way, just because it is falling apart and it's gonna need to be replaced at some point. So, and I don't know, I hadn't looked into how to do that or other ways that it could possibly be funded. I don't know if it's something that we could set some money aside that would go to it and do it after a couple of years, something like that. I guess that's kind of one of my bigger concerns, to try to find ways to fund a new sorter.
And just to comment on that, so the sorter is included in the capital
That's in the
funding
capital,
request.
yeah.
As proposed, the capital budget is at $4,350,000 approximately, which is about 50,000 under the target of 4.4 million. So potentially some additional money could be allocated there within the target. Plus that target is something that is set by the council, so that can be adjusted, or if there's savings from other projects that aren't going forward or other projects posed, money can be moved around within that list of capital projects. I'm working on adding in tentatively the items that you had identified in the operating worksheet. So I will add those in and just confirm where we are in the totals.
Thank you.
yeah, and my comments would be, I'm really concerned, and I want us to stick to very much a maintenance style budget this year. Well, I really appreciate and understand the request for staff. We've consistently added staff in the time that I've been on this council, and it's been adding staff each year consistently. And so I think we have to be very mindful of the fact that as we add people, then we're responsible for those people moving forward. And we're responsible for keeping their pay equitable. And I think it's very important to address current staff that we have in terms of pay equity. And I'm always very hesitant when we dip into any kind of reserve fund or fund that is based on a contingency side for staffing and pay. I think we always have to be mindful of that. I understand the great need and the desire for more police in the city. And I could support that and would get behind it to some degree, but we have to get a bang for our buck out of it. I think expecting the police to go through the conservancy and keep an eye on things and see that dog poop is picked up is probably not a realistic thing. But having police do real policing, which is out on the road, on the streets, traffic enforcement, big picture public safety is important, and there's probably some community support for that. I'm really concerned about what we're doing with our conservancies, and one of the biggest things that we've are pulling out of the budget that I would like us to consider is, I think we have to be mindful of our tree maintenance and pruning and planting new trees. You know, we talk about wanting to fund environmental initiatives, sustainability initiatives, and a lot of things like that in the city. But one of the most basic fundamental things we can do is plant trees, take care of trees, because trees are the lungs of our planet. And so I think we can address a lot of sustainability and a lot of issues like that from many perspectives. And sometimes the simplest thing to do is to have more trees. And trees add a lot of value to the city. There was some mention of trees being more on the capital side of things. I don't have my head around that right now, but so I think to take on an aggressive posture of adding more staff, I would like to be cautious with. I'm not closing the door on it. Certainly open to at least one position in the police department. And the library has asked for equipment in the past. What I really appreciate is when a department comes back for round 2, round 3, round 4 in budgeting. So then we know what really comes to the top. So to show up in a budget for the first time around and say, hey, we need 9 people. Okay, well, let's see what we need next year and the year after that and the year after that and what sticks. Well, every year, and I haven't been around a long time, but the community and the council has asked us to take a look at increasing law enforcement. I think we know that there's great need in taking care of the conservancies in our parks, and that takes real people and real labor. If there's a consistent need and it continues to come up, then I think we have to take that seriously. As far as marketing goes, for parks and a communication person's in marketing, I have a hard time with something that's a little bit more softer skill on that side, where when we have people who are out actually fixing things, planting things, and improving our trails and grounds, I think that's the kind of impact that the city sees. I know we have to sell things and market things for people to be aware of things, but we already have a communications person in the city. And while that person may be already dedicated and have bandwidth on other things, I think until we've pushed everybody to their very limit, and when they walk in the door until they leave at the end of the day, that they only have time to take a break and eat their lunch, then we know they're busy. And, welcome to my world. So I'm going to push hard for a maintenance budget this time. If we have surplus funds, that's great. And I think we have to then throw some of this back out to the council as well for their deliberation and review.
I'm gonna just one of the things that you mentioned too, the community service officer for the police department.
Mhm.
And you're concerned that we want police to be policing the roads and
Yep.
doing serious stuff. I see the CSO officer as someone who takes some of that burden away from other officers who will be out on the road and doing that kind of stuff. So I see that as a way of getting the police to do more police stuff.
What can a CSO do? Maybe I need to be educated.
Yeah.
A CSO is not a sworn officer,
Yeah. So they do,
community service officer.
Community
They
service.
do things like enforce leash laws and tell people they can't park their cars on the sidewalk.
They can't,
And-
they can't
and the-
cite or.
yeah. And the city had one who retired a few years ago, Mark Walther, was a police officer, but before he retired, he was working as a community service officer. He drove the truck around where you'd put up the little digital signs and,
Mhm.
did public safety kind of stuff.
Yep, gotcha.
So I think those are very useful positions, and it helps free up the police to do
Gotcha.
traditional
Yep, gotcha.
police things, so.
Thanks for the education.
Our staff has increased every year, but so has our population, so has the number of trails that we maintain, so has the number of parks, and the number of acres of conservancy land, the number of roads. It's all increasing. And I think perhaps you're not thinking broadly enough about all the work that a staff that doesn't change, how do we squeeze more out of the staff? The description you just gave to me is horrifying, that we make sure that the staff, from the minute they get here to the minute they leave, with only their break for lunch, that we get them, they're working the whole time. I get it. That's how some workplaces are. But if we want to retain quality staff, people who, excel at what they do and want a good life-work balance, having such a draconian style for the workday, I think just works completely against that. So I disagree. That may be how some workplaces are, but those aren't the workplaces that people want to work in and make a long-term career in. Randall covered the CSO versus sworn officer. Conservancy lands. Trees are great. I can get behind trees and planting them and pruning them and maintaining them. And I do have some recommendations when we get to the capital side of the budget. But the number one thing that we need, according to our conservancy lands plan, is a conservancy technician. We do pay private consultants, landscapers to come and do some things that perhaps a technician will be able to do. So there might be either a little cost savings there or more beneficial work going on in our conservancies, which, again, speaking only about the District 6 residents I interact with, everybody wants to see the conservancies maintained. So I'm going to recommend and move at some point to add that conservancy technician back in. The soft things, again, the soft things are part of what make Middleton a great place to live. If we want to be in a community where all we do is provide for roads and utilities and fire protection, that's a town. And that's what towns do. We do more than that because we are a city. So if we have services and programs available, I think it just makes sense for us to be advertising or publicizing those services. So I support the rec staffing position. I have a question about the tree-related item that's in It's the forestry operations in the amount of $156,256. The question is that amount in addition to the $153,712 requested as a capital project, which is currently also recommended for cutting? So in other words, are those two separate activities or are they the same thing? Kylie?
I would say they're for tree pruning and tree care, so and just to reiterate what you were saying, the capital request, and then the operational request, those amounts, are they the same? Is that what you're asking? Or
Yes.
for the same purpose?
Well, are they two different projects, two different activities?
They're for tree maintenance or tree pruning, and we put them in both locations for tree pruning to increase, not knowing where we could best position an increase in to get us closer to the funding that was provided this year to get us to a 6-year maintenance program. So I would have to look at the numbers a little bit closer to give you, but what we were allocated in funding for 2025 is basically kind of where we would want to be for 2026 or a bit higher.
It would be great by our next meeting to get confirmation as to whether, to do the forestry operations and pruning that staff recommend based on, all the research that we've done and commissioned. Do you need $310,000 to pay for all that? That's the sum of those two items, or is the $155,000 sufficient? Does that make sense? Because if it's in the budget in two places, operations and capital, then I'm thinking we need $310,000. But if it's in the budget in two places because the assumption was one of those would be cut, then we only need $155,000. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
I have to look at it a little closer to get you
Thank
a
you.
better answer.
Sure.
Yeah, so.
Thank you. And again, we're getting into the capital. Don't have any more questions for
Okay.
you, Kylie. I bring that up because I do think the tree maintenance is a legitimate capital project and would like to see the cost of whatever that cost may be, 310, 155. I'd like to see that in the capital budget. So if no one else has amendments to suggest for the general fund, I guess I would make a motion, or I'd be content to let my colleagues think about it for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, first I would apologize for sounding draconian. That's not my intent. I guess my intent is just to continue to stress the importance of a maintenance budget and to be very mindful of our commitment in the future as we bring on more staff. Obviously, our city is growing to some degree, and that's really my point. The other thing is, I forgot to ask a question about the roofing program based on that memo that was issued. I went through it and looked at it, and based on these figures that are, from a total of 10 years of cost, I came up with a figure of $3,345 a year that we would be spending right now without moving ahead with a maintenance program, versus $24,000 a year. So it
Yeah.
seems,
If I may, I just wanted to comment. I did speak with Jim Scholander this afternoon. He wanted me to clarify that was the best information they could readily find. They have only been tracking things for the last couple of years, so that is not necessarily a complete reflection of everything that was spent over the last 10 years. I also suspect that there has probably been a fair amount of deferred maintenance because we haven't had a program in place and it's been more just responding to when there's a particular issue versus things that you would ideally do on an annual basis.
Okay. So I just wanted to go back to that because I'm coming up with wildly different numbers than, what, on that memo. And then the other, thing I just wanted to mention was in terms of cost of leaf collection, if we're spending, basically, $65,000 a year collecting leaves, and we divide that up by number of properties that we go to, you know, what would that come out to be per household? How many households do we have that we pick up leaves from in Middleton?
I think it's around 5,000.
Close enough.
Well, I mean, it says in the answers, there are approximately 5,570 households receiving recycling service, but that sounds to me like the number of households. I am ambivalent or haven't figured out how I feel about brush collection. Leaf collection, I feel very strongly needs to stay in the budget, needs to be an activity we undertake because our stormwater utility referendum last year emphasized leaf collection as one of the activities that the city currently was paying for in the general fund. And we wanted to be able to put that on the stormwater utility where it really belongs because collecting leaves helps to protect our waters. So I would be uncomfortable taking leaf collection out of our budget and list of things to do because that is a stormwater function. Brush collection, not so much.
Yeah, well, cost of leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah, and raising this, I'm not saying take it out. I'm just pointing out that at the most, it would be $15 per household per year. So I'm not advocating to take it out, either, but I'm also stating that if we have to go to our residents and say, well, we have to charge you $15 a year, are you willing to pay that for a curbside service or not? It's just something to think about. So I appreciate that information being gathered.
I have another question, actually a couple questions about the general fund side. And then also I wanted to note, so the budget projection assumptions that Bill has presented previously include a slide with the potential uses of the TID3 closure levy limit increase. And that includes $500,000 for personnel contingency or staffing. So once we get into the 2027 budget year, there will be additional funding for staff. I agree, cost to continue is important. But again, I would say if we keep the staff at the same size this year compared to last year, that is not a cost to continue, that is going back because we have added things for our staff to tend to. And so it would not be actually continuing, it would be going backwards. So the questions, page 38, it's this is in operations side. It's the $2,000 for the plan books. And my question is, do we not have $2,000 in the budget this year that we could use to buy those plan books?
I suspect that there probably would be funds somewhere within the budget where that could be covered this year.
I mean, it's a very important expense, but when I see something like that, I'm like, okay, why don't we just get them this year and take that out of next year's budget? Unless there's a 2026 version coming and it won't be published until the new year. I wondered what the Erdman Park Cross Country Ski Project is under admin. It's because it's not mentioned elsewhere in the document. It's one of the goals.
that's the kind of community partnership project that we have with the CXC for not only the lodge building that's going to be under construction soon, but also just that whole general complex. So that's just to reference the fact that that's a project that we've been working on for a number of years now and are getting closer to certain phases of that project coming underway, but just getting that to continue to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think we should move this forward to the common council. To keep it moving along,
Well, we have one more meeting to discuss the budget, correct?
we have to have a public
That,
hearing.
that's correct. We do need direction
That's with
tonight
this
on the
committee.
hearing, but there would be
Yep.
another meeting available to discuss budget adjustments by the committee.
Yep.
Are you able to bring up that operations table,
Yes.
please? Okay, so this is just the general fund. And this,
Yeah, and I
Okay.
have tentatively added in the items that you had listed, highlighted in red.
thank you.
By my calculation, there's 18,532 remaining, but I did want to double check that I had captured everything correctly.
Yep, that is, that's correct.
Can you scroll down on that, Bill?
So the revenues were the additional state road aid revenue, 112,623, post recycling fee at 292,424. On the expenditure side, 24,000 for the roof preventative maintenance agreement. The full-time police training officer, 135,686. Two part-time community service officers for 50,795. The proposed rec staffing change for 82,017. Conservancy land technician for 92,17. And I think I had missed highlighting the additional 2,000 for the
Training and
training and
recognition.
recognition.
Okay, and then where does this bring us for a total?
So net total with the additional revenue and the additional expenditures is to the positive by 18,532 currently.
Do the members want to take time to think about this for next time?
I'm okay, I just want, scroll down, Bill. Go up, let's see, where are we? Keep going. Okay, please. Yeah. I'm okay, but, I can't, get around the, approval of the additional, staff for, rec staff person position. Okay, with Conservancy land stack.
Is there a position you would fund instead?
Nope,
Not the urban forestry technician?
one technician at this time.
Just a potential option to consider if there is additional discussion at the next meeting, there could be direction to publish the budget as was originally proposed and then make adjustments at the next meeting. But obviously it's up to the committee's pleasure.
I think it would be a good idea to put these positions in the budget that's published. We won't be able to, we don't have time tonight to make changes to the capital budget, or at least not many, because we only have about 10 minutes. But I think it would be worthwhile to have these positions in the version that goes out for the hearing so that we can ask the public.
It's just that I'm really concerned about the forestry operation side of things. And my interpretation of that is, as you discussed with Kylie. Right, why is it in two places? And when I look back, I think on the memo from July, that was really, go ahead, come on up, please. It was more of a proposal
I
to
just
make
had
that a
look really
capital,
quick.
right? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just had to look really quick.
Yeah, yeah.
The operational budget is to do the regular pruning cycle, and so that's to get it on a regular cycle of the 6-year pruning throughout the city, and then the capital amount is for all the additional needs that we have in our inventory for removals and for damaged trees to get us up to that regular pruning cycle. So we have such a far deferred maintenance log to get to just a maintenance and get that backlog caught up. But we are really the real need is that we have funding for pruning and contracted services to reduce that. So whatever amount we can close the gap is what we are trying to get to. So both amounts are needed, but
Okay.
any amount higher is better.
Can you pull the spreadsheet up again, Bill?
Yep.
Any creative ideas?
Well, I think the forestry operations, I mean, it's out of the budget now, the operations budget. I would suggest when we cover the capital budget next time, we consider the 310,000 needed for forestry and the regular pruning. We consider the 350,000 for the library's sorter, because that has been on the list for a couple years. And then some other changes, but I agree, I share your concern about forestry, and I want to see the trees. I have a couple constituents who haven't had their street tree replaced. It was had to come down, or it came down in a storm, and it's been years, and they would like their tree. So I totally support additional forestry operations.
Yeah, I mean, that dollar amount, I mean, we can't fund all of it, but we could fund some of it, right? So, if we eliminate the one staff position and fund the forestry side of it, that would be a trade-off.
Kylie, can you go back to the podium, please? So the $82,000 for the additional staff time. Explain again, it's a part-time position now, and
The
The-
staff position that it's marked under recreation, it's actually an entire department position, so it's not, it's through our rec division side that the position is currently labeled as, and that might be misleading because it markets and communicates park projects, forestry operations, if we're, and conservancy lands, volunteer events, outreach. That way, that position is really geared towards an outreach position, and also to gain additional revenue through a sponsorship program that we're launching in the next month or so. And so that is also additional revenue we're hoping to see. I don't have a solid number that I can propose to you at this time, but the position is a current 1,200 hour year position, and we're looking to increase it right now in the budget. That's a full-time. I would be, we're in discussions on that position of just if it would be under 30 hours a week, but increased to a part-time year-round position. In my budget presentation, I noted that if it wasn't that full 82,000, but we're limited to that 1,200 hour, and that is very difficult when we have variance in our seasons as well, our peak times.
okay.
So what would you like to see, Kylie? You had to choose. You want more in the forestry operations, or you want a staff person?
I would say both, and that's on a
I'm not
decision
giving you,
for
an-
you.
I'm saying you have to choose one or the other. That's the way.
Forestry operations, or that position.
Yep.
I'm gonna, stick to the priorities that we had listed, and, go forward with a recreation, staffing position as our highest need. And then I think determining how forestry can be supported through our capital, will, additionally hopefully support that effort.
I appreciate you refreshing our memories about the outreach program, the finding sponsorships, relationship building is how I think of that. And also the fact that this position would be for the whole rec department. Would they, right, the Parks and Recreation, sorry. And would they be able to publicize things like the youth center?
Yep, that's a part of our recreation, that's a program, a part of our recreation division, so, they currently, help with promotions on that, but, would help, to gather, more outreach on that,
Do they
effort.
go out and do fundraising?
That is a question for Bill and Brian about fundraising for the city.
Not to go down
Yeah.
the rabbit hole, but fundraising, no. Sponsorship program, yes.
Like for the youth center?
If there was a sponsorship program for the youth center, they could help administer that, but they can't be doing direct solicitation for, people to donate money.
That's
Okay.
what we'd be looking at. Currently, there's $8,000 allocated, and we haven't been able to hit that target because we don't have the means. So we've been building that sponsorship program specifically for the youth center, to have sponsorship opportunities to help offset the $95,000 that the general fund puts in.
Gotcha.
In the interest of time, and because I do think it would be beneficial to publish a version of the budget that includes these staff positions and the roof contract change, which I could go take it or leave it. I guess I'll move to amend the general fund. Can you pull it up, Bill? Sorry.
Pull it up again, Bill.
I'm going to move to amend the 2026 proposed general fund operating budget decision matrix to add the items showing in red. And I'll read what those are once Bill scrolls down, reflecting an increase in the revenue for state transportation, state aid roads, and adding a recycling fee. And on the expenditure side, recommending the police department positions 1 and 2. Thank you. The Parks, Recreation, Forestry, and Conservancy lands positions 1 and 2. And $2,000 for recognition for a recognition event for and or training for cities, I'm sorry, committees and commissions. So those are the things, the 2 CSO part-time positions, full-time training officer, rec staffing, conservancy technician, and $2,000 for the training or recognition event to be offset by the additional revenue. Sorry, that was a very long.
And just to clarify, that was all of the items previously discussed, but not including the roof preventative maintenance agreement at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay. Oh. Yeah,
So
Deanna
that's-
was asking about the plan books or the code books for building inspection, if that's part of this.
It's so small, we can come back to that. I just want to make sure, like, yeah, I appreciate that, but I don't think any member of the public is going to flag that. So that's my motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay, I won't repeat the motion. It was up on the screen in front of us. If that's okay.
That's fine.
All right, okay. All those in favor of proposed, call it draft, decision matrix, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Oh, Bill, sorry.
We
Get
need
let's
to,
get the, agenda back here. We buried it. Discuss the direction regarding publication of notice. Just, direction regarding publication of notice. You had that, the recommendations, Bill? I think we're okay.
Yeah, I think
with
it would be
those
appropriate if there
next
were a
meeting.
motion to publish the recommend publication of the public hearing notice based on the proposed budget as amended
Mhm.
this evening.
okay, then I'll make that motion.
Okay, Larman will second that. Any questions? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
We adjourn?
And we stand adjourned.
Thank you.